Hey everyone, I'm Liz and today I'm going to show you how I made one of these companion cube inspired crochet cushions, and as you can see it's on both sides. You can also use this tutorial to make a six-sided cube the same way, but you should bear in mind that you are going to need to use about triple the amount of yarn that it would take to make one of these because you're going to be making six sides instead of just two. So with that in mind, here are the materials that you're going to need. I'm using two different crochet hooks for different parts of the cube. I'm using this size I and this size E. Also, you'll need a pair of scissors and a needle to sew your ends in, and the yarn that I'm using is Simply Soft. I'm using charcoal gray heather, 2 balls of that, and 1 ball of just regular gray heather, and this watermelon pink. So the first thing I'm going to do is take both strands of my charcoal gray heather yarn and crochet them both together at the same time. So I have both ends together and I'm going to make a slip knot. So now I've got my slip knot made. I'm going to take my bigger sized hook, the size I. I'm going to insert it into that loop of the slip knot. And then I'm going to chain 17. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So now I have 17 chains on my hook. So now I'm going to double crochet into the fourth chain from the hook. So the hook is in this chain here. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So into that fourth chain, I'm going to double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over and into that fourth chain. And insert my hook, pull up a loop, and I'm going to double crochet. So now I'm going to double crochet until I get to the last chain of the row. So I'm on the last double crochet of the row. So to get to the next row, I'm going to chain up. I'm going to chain 1 and 2. So I'm going to turn the work around, and then I'm going to double crochet the rest of, I'm going to double crochet in the rest of the stitches until I get to the end of the row. So that chain counts as our first stitch, so now I'm just going to continue double crocheting in every other stitch after. So I've gotten to the last stitch of the row, so I'm going to double crochet into that chain space that I made. Pull up my loop and double crochet. And now to get to the next row, I'm going to chain up again. So I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm going to turn the work around and double crochet just as I did in the last row into every other stitch after. So into the second stitch, double crochet, and continue to double crochet all the way across the row. So I'm on the last stitch of the row, and now I'm going to chain up for the next row. So I'm on the 4th row now, and I'm going to continue until I have 9 rows of double crochet in total. So I'm going to do 6 more rows after these 3 that I've already finished. So I'm going to turn the work around, yarn over, and double crochet into every stitch in the row. So this is the 4th row, and I'm going to continue until I have 9 rows. Okay, so I've finished with the 9 rows of double crochet, and now I have a full-sized square. So to finish, I'm going to do a row of slip stitches all the way around the square. And to start, I'm going to chain 1, and then just to add a defined corner, I'm going to go into the same stitch that I just did, pull up a loop, and slip stitch. You don't really have to do that because the corners won't be visible in the finished product, but I'm going to go ahead just to add it as a reminder where the corners all are. And now I'm going to slip stitch down the side. It doesn't have to be exact because, as I said, a lot of the corners will be obscured from view in the final product. But try to make about between 12 and 16 slip stitches down each side. Okay, so I finished my slip stitches on this side. So now I'm going to chain 1 for the corner, and then into that same stitch that I just slip stitched, I'm going to slip stitch again and turn the work slightly so I can slip stitch on the other side. Now this side will be a lot easier because there's the open loops from the foundation row. So I'm just going to slip stitch once into every stitch in the foundation row. Okay, and now I've gotten to the corner, so I'm going to chain 1 again, and then into the same stitch, I'm going to slip stitch 1 more time. Then I'm going to turn the work around slightly, and I'm going to do a row of slip stitches down this side, the same way that I did the other side, and try to do it between 12 and 16 slip stitches. This one that I'm doing ended up being 15 slip stitches on the other side, so I'm going to try to keep it the same as it is on the other side. So I've gotten to the corner again, so I'm going to chain 1 and go into the same stitch and slip stitch again. Then I'm going to turn the work around and do the last side, and this side I can just slip stitch into the row that I just made. And now on the last stitch, I'm just going to slip stitch one last time, take my scissors, and I'm going to cut off my yarn. And I'm just going to pull my tails through to the back side, through that corner. And now I have my first square, and I need to make 4 more for the first side, and 3 more for the first side and 4 more for the second side. So as you can see, I've made the 4 squares for the first side. So I'm going to take the first one and put the other ones aside for now. And I'm going to take my pink yarn, and I'm going to take my size E hook. And then I'm going to do a line of slip stitches across 2 sides and 1 corner of this square. So I'm going to go to the first corner, and into that tip I'm going to pull up a loop and chain 1. And then I'm going to slip stitch in every stitch all the way across. And I'm going to continue to slip stitch until I get to that first corner. So I've gotten to the second corner, so I'm going to slip stitch, then I'm going to chain one and slip stitch into the same stitch so that I still keep my corner defined. And now I'm going to slip stitch across this other side until I get to the opposite corner on the other side. So I've reached the last slip stitch of the row, so I'm just going to slip stitch down one last time, and then I'm going to chain up twice and turn the work around, and then into these back loops, or the farthest loops from the gray part, I'm going to double crochet all the way around. So I'm going to yarn over and then into just one of these loops. I'm going to insert my hook. So into just one loop, I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, and double crochet. And then into the next one, I'm just going to go into that one loop, and then double crochet. I'm going to double crochet in each of these loops. And as you can see in the front, this is what it's going to look like. And I'm going to go all the way to this corner. So I've gotten to the corner, and now I'm going to increase this stitch to go on to the other side. But first I'm going to chain one to add a corner. This is just going to make it easier to sew all of the different corners together. But it's not going to be visible from in the finished product, so you don't actually have to chain one. It'll just make it a lot easier to sew everything together. So I'm going to insert my hook into that same stitch, and then double crochet. And now I'm going to continue along this other side, doing the same thing, inserting my hook into that back loop and double crochet. I'm going to continue to insert my hook into this back loop and double crochet until I get to the end of the row. Okay, so I've done the last double crochet of the row. So now to end this row, I'm just going to chain one, and I'm going to cut off my yarn, but I'm going to leave a long tail so that I can sew all of the pieces together in the end. I'm going to pull my yarn through, and now I just need to add this pink edge to all of my squares so that I can sew the pink sides together.